Hi, today's part of our Business Spotlight program. I'm with Gary O'Keefe, and he's the CEO of Cruit Resourcing based in Dublin. So over to you, Gary. What is it you do, and for how long have you been doing it?
So I guess the easiest way to answer it is that I've been doing it since 1996, which seems like a lifetime ago. And we are international recruiters. So I'm an international recruitment CEO. Our mission and purpose is statement is we are ethically connecting people and changing lives. So we operate in 14 countries, headquartered in Dublin, and we serve various different market verticals.
Fantastic. Okay. And what do you've been growing over that period since 96? I mean, we're coming up to nearly 30 years now, are we? And what do you attribute your growth to?
So I guess to answer the question, the pathway to this has been 9 years working, growing since I was in my early 20s. I went out alone in 2023, which is 21 years ago this year. And there has been a
20,
couple,
to 2003, is it?
sorry, 2003, sorry, yeah. Yeah, that's right. I keep saying 2023. Yeah, it would be 2 years ago. No, 2003, so nearly 21 years, 22 years, God. Um, and the mission has been like through various, if you can imagine, 2003, 30 years old, flying along. The next thing we have the biggest global financial crash. And the first thing to get hit are recruitment companies, and we suffered badly. But muddled through the pain, and then a couple of more iterations and various trials at partnerships, alliances, and so on. So finally, we got our model right in 2015,
Right.
and we have been focused on international growth. So what do I attribute it to? I attribute it to firstly having a passion for achieving something, which is to grow an international infrastructure of human resource that was ethically done, stable, and scalable. That's what we've been really focusing on. So I guess the first thing, I guess, what would I attribute growth to? I would say desire and focus.
Okay, fantastic. And when you say you made it scalable, how would you, what were the kind of the main building blocks of that?
Systems, systems, systems. So every single thing that we would have attributed to, a spectacular performance from anybody in the business
Hmm.
wasn't scalable unless it was repeatable.
Right.
And that was me included. So the first thing we did was we identified the major threats to the business, and I turned out to be the biggest threat because as a founder CEO, you can fall into the trap of it being your life's work and your way, and the kind of there are numerous examples of pitfalls. So that was the first thing to identify what would scalable look like, and what scalable looked like meant systems. So the most difficult thing for any entrepreneur to do in my opinion, is to stop doing what you're doing, take a step back, and say, how would somebody else do this better than me, or at least repeatable, or how would we grow it? Because you can fall into the excellence trap. And I always say to people that perfect is the enemy of good.
Yep.
And that's hard to go. It's hard to do. It's hard to let go of something that is your life's work. So that's the big focus that I personally had to do as CEO.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's one of our main thrusts when we're dealing with business owners is actually it sounds trite, but to get out of your own way,
Get out
basically.
of your own way. Yeah. I read a book one time by Gina Wickman called oh God, I'll think of it in a minute. But one of the big things in it was letting go of the vine. So you have to let go of the vine yourself. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Traction was the book. Traction, actually. Yeah,
action. Yes, yes, yeah. I've
yeah.
I've, I've gone through it. Yeah, it is.
Mm,
It's a great book actually to read for any of the
mm.
viewers. Um, if you had to start in square one in business, what would you do differently?
Easy answer. Because I finally got it right. And now when you finally get something right, you start smacking yourself on the head. You said, oh, so to answer the question, I would say all of us have had people in our organization that we maybe agonized over letting go until you
Mhm.
do it. And then when you do let them go, the first thing you say to yourself is, why didn't I do this earlier? Right? So hiring decisions are the biggest mistakes and the biggest wins that I've had.
Mhm.
The big difference for me is not understanding why somewhere wins and somewhere not wins
Mhm.
was the change. So what would I do differently? I would do the last thing that every entrepreneur, including me, does differently, and
Mhm.
that is to figure out what your values are.
Okay, good.
Because as soon as we got our values right, we looked at some of the hires that went wrong and some that went right, and we actually understood what that meant. So, big deal, big piece of work, very torturous piece of work when you want to be running and you have to literally yank the handbrake in the middle of a Grand Prix race. We got it down. So we got it down to 5 values.
Wow.
And yeah, and that sounds like, I mean, wow, did we really spend 2 weeks with a senior leadership team just for 5 values? And we did.
And
And
what are the five values, if I may ask?
so we started with I was very bent on having a no blame culture because I think that blame is a really destructive force within any team, and it's so destructive that it could sink anything, and I've seen it happen. So I changed having no blame, which was a bit blunt, to the value of empowered accountability. So we will empower people to make mistakes, but we will hold you accountable to them.
Okay.
We will ask you to be accountable. The second value is we said, right, if we want to be the best, there's no end game with being the best. I don't think any athlete, any high performer in any section could ever say, yes, I've that done now. So within traditional crafts, you would hear of somebody being a master, and we said we would like to master our craft, but that never ends. So we focused on mastery being a value. So do we want to continually improve using all of the things we've all heard about, the Japanese system of Kaizen, making it 1% better, all of them count. The whole value for us was mastery. We need people who are committed to doing their job better and better and better, and that would be a value. So we're always, when we started, we had a lot of torturous debate about what was a personal value and a company value, and what should be only a personal value and a company value, and where do you trade, where are you okay with everything. So that was something we said that fits us. Then, you hear people talking about thinking outside the box. A bit of a cliche. Don't like it. We say we never had a box to begin with, but and the old Napoleon comment was the first victim in every battle is the plan. So as soon as you start, and you can use 1,000 comments on this. So we looked at what do we do when we need to rethink something, and the value we came up with, and not the comment, because these are deep rooted values, is that ability to reimagine possibilities.
Okay.
So I learned that from years and years ago. I did a mediation training course. I had grand notions of myself to be a mediator, and
Okay.
the poor lady that was facilitating the course said I was the worst mediator of all time, but I would make a great negotiator because I picked one side and stood with it. I found it very difficult to not get involved. But
Yeah.
what I did learn from that was, when you get what's called a BATNA, a best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Right.
Okay. And then that lady trained us to invent solutions that weren't there before. And that
Wow.
got me thinking on reimagining the possibilities. And that has served us well. So going back to your question, which is, what would I do differently? This now was a eureka moment for me
Mhm.
because I said, if I knew this, if I had had the discipline to sit down and get this right, not give it cursory glance, or say, oh, this ticks a box. Yes, our values. Now it's actually driving us. So reimagining the possibilities. So we had empowered accountability, mastery, reimagining possibilities. And I remember watching in Ireland, there was the Irish version of The Apprentice, and we had Bill Cullen, who was
Mhm.
I think he was a Renault dealer, and I remember taking issue with him saying, I want a warrior. He said, oh, that's all bull, but it isn't. And we looked at, having people in your organization that want to fight for the badge, having people that really want to fight for themselves, their own honor, the company honor, and just the satisfaction of saying, yeah, that was good. That translated to a value of having a warrior spirit.
Wow.
Everybody has a warrior spirit that comes out differently. We have some extremely reserved and quiet people that have that mentality of really driving through a problem, that they are warriors in their own rights. They don't have to be vocal or brash or demonstrative. They are warriors, though, in their own heads. And having that across the whole team, that's something that really got me focused. And the last one, um, which you could argue would be the first one, and in fact, 90% of our team would, is people who will do the right thing. Now, the reason I left it at last is because unless you go through those other four first, it gets missed. And doing the right thing, there is never a script for doing the right thing. There's never a checkbox like you can do in engineering. Is that the right tolerance? Is it the right size? So it is that kind of understanding of what is the right thing. And that all of them then tapped in to our mission statement, which is
Mhm.
ethically connecting people and transforming lives.
Yep.
So that's a piece of work that had I have done that any day sooner than I would have done it, it would have been a massive value to me.
Fantastic. Yeah. I started this coaching 20 years ago, more now, 21, I suppose. And with a background in accountancy and investment banking, both here and abroad, throughout the Middle East, and working with people like Citigroup and Schroders and I don't know what all is. I thought all exactly what you've gone through there. When I started out, we were learning this, and I thought, God, that's all a bit fluffy. Now, 50, 60% of my coaching is about getting this right.
Yeah,
And this could be third generation business that we're doing it with. And
yeah,
you get this right, and again, it goes back, I suppose, to keep quoting old Peter Drucker back in the 60s, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Because
yeah,
if you've got the culture right, the strategies become easy.
yeah,
Equally, the reverse is also true. The
yeah,
strategies are difficult if your culture isn't right. And I spent all of my clients, a lot of the growth is attributed to getting the culture right, getting the vision, getting the mission, and having the culture and the core values. I just absolutely love what you've just gone through there. It's fantastic. A great example of that, and if anything, kind of reaffirmed what I need to be doing with clients. Um, Going back to, I think you touched on some of it, but what have been your biggest learnings as an employer since you began in business? I think you kind of touched on it there earlier. Yeah.
yeah. I would say the biggest one are understanding the values first and making sure you're hiring people that have the values. Um, I also guess that sorry, my light went off.
Oh, yeah.
I also guess um, how would I put this sensitively? As an entrepreneur and founder and CEO, I have made the mistakes of getting blurring the lines between people in your business and seeing them as friends and that. I think as an employer, you need good discipline. There's a great Irish language word which describes it, which is almost you can't do a direct translation, but the word is smacht, SMAACHT, and smacht is having that discipline to do things properly. West of Ireland people might say, "I'll put a bit of smacht on that guy," I'll straighten him out. And when we were young fellas, it meant a clip around the ear. But I think I've learned to understand that you are running a business, and that while you want people to be part of your culture and understand your values, as an employer, you have a duty of care to be a good
Mhm.
business manager, which means making hard decisions earlier.
Yeah.
And I guess if there's one thing that I've learned most as an employer, it is to make decisions, make calls earlier. If you
Mhm.
have somebody in your business that you're you're avoiding the hard conversations with,
Mhm.
All you're doing is you're damaging your own reputation, you're damaging your business performance, and you're actually damaging that person.
Mhm.
Because I'm sure many people have gone through this. Oh, I don't like saying that to him because I'm going to upset him or her. Well,
Right.
that's not a good enough reason not to do it. And
Hmm.
there are plenty of decent ways of having hard conversations. And I've learned as a good employer that having those conversations earlier and more clear, setting out clearly defined expectations and having much earlier interventions when expectations aren't as they are. I think that that's one thing I've learned a lot, and I do it differently than I would have done 10 years ago.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know we have a kind of a trite phrase as well, hire slow, fire fast.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yes.
And firing somebody is not necessarily a bad thing. You could be doing that person the best
Yeah.
favor you've ever done them,
Yeah.
because imagine the stress of somebody being in a job that they're afraid to have a conversation with you. Nobody should be afraid to have a conversation. You should do it quickly.
Absolutely. 100%. Couldn't agree more on that one. Yeah. Um, and so then going a bit over to your personal life, how do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business?
Well, I guess there's no point getting older unless you get smarter. I definitely wouldn't have done it well in the past.
Right.
Um, Not ashamed to say, like I have what has been diagnosed as an adult as extreme ADHD. So I remember going the last line of defense, and I was really, really anti this tagging. And I said to the doctor, "So after all that talking, testing, and analyzing, I don't have ADHD." And he says, "No, you have extreme ADHD." So I don't care whether you have that or whether you have anything. I guess how I balance it is, for me personally, is I have to contain it within time frames, right?
Okay.
So, and I'd be the worst. You can imagine having that kind of a diagnosis. You get scattered and you go all over the place. I'm an extreme in my personal life. Like I have extreme adventurism. On my thing, I've a Guinness World Record for doing the longest drive on ice in
Oh,
2020. We made a TV documentary which I had no idea about. I've ridden extreme motorcycles from Cape Town to Tel Aviv and across Siberia. I've been in 104 countries, and next week, with any luck, I'll be visiting Syria. So it'll be 105 just for a holiday. So you
well,
can get the picture.
that's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, so how I balance it actually is pretty simple. Um, I contain it between Monday and Friday.
Okay.
I don't care how many hours I put in. It takes somebody a lot of effort to do 60 hours work, actual work between Monday and Friday. That's a lot,
Hmm.
you know, and that's how I do it. I don't mind starting early. In fact, I really insist on starting early. So 7 a.m. is my start, and
Hmm.
I'm out of there kind of. I like to be out at 5, but if it takes until 6, fair enough, but not beyond if you can help it at all. And okay, the 60 hours are going to be pushed, but once it comes to the end of that Friday, you are not going to be an effective person to yourself
Hmm.
or to your business if you're dragging that into your weekends,
Hmm.
because you need clear breaks from it. So that's how I personally balance it. I haven't done that well in the past. And I'd say I was about 10 kilos lighter a few years ago. So, numbers matter, metrics matter, and that's one thing I've got to get, I'd say, better on top of, because this business, like I've done an MBO in 2023, which was adversarial for a number of years before that, and which was traumatic in the restructure of the business beyond that.
Hmm.
So sometimes, I can admit, like I made uh, poor decisions around health, and nothing actually major, but I'm 52 years old, so
Hmm.
when the red lights come on the dashboard, you kind of have to pay a bit more attention than if you're 42. I still think I'm fit to take over the world, but yeah, I don't know if I would do now at 52 what I would do when I was 42. And you never think like that when you're 42. So if anybody's there, I'd say this will happen.
Yeah.
You will be slower.
Yeah. And on a serious note, on that one, because I see it a lot. Obviously, I'm dealing with lots of different companies over the years, and it's extremely when it does go wrong, it can go very wrong on the health side. So what I would urge is not really part of this, but would urge to, yeah, absolutely have a look at it. And again, when you get to my stage of the game, 52 is young for me.
Yeah,
And
42 is young for me, so it's all
yeah,
relative.
yes, everything is relative.
Mhm.
But I would say I've seen it where people don't take it seriously, and the results can be catastrophic, literally for personally and for everything. So absolutely on the balance, whatever it takes, you've got. I would imagine if you decide to go into to getting the health absolutely right, you'll go at it
Yeah.
at a pace. Yeah.
And actually, one of the sometimes you get a little eureka moment. So I think December 23, I was down in Morocco with a team of adventurers, and I'm not sure if you've seen my WhatsApp picture, but I have it up there as a reminder to don't be so dumb. I have an old Land Cruiser Jeep, and I went over a sand dune. I was on a little bit of a break, went over a sand dune, nose dived in, and broke two vertebrae in my neck up high, my cervical spine. I wound up with almost a paralyzed arm. Anyway, luckily enough, I was okay. And I was about to just plow on, because I've had multiple accidents, 21 full general anesthetics I've had in my lifetime. I've lost one eye, I've screws, wires, you name it,
Oh,
and now they're starting to hurt. But
no.
the surgeon, the neurosurgeon, kind of wasn't impressed by me and looked at me as with a bit of disdain, said, "Here's another jackass that thinks he can take over the world." And he
Mm.
just looked at me and he says, "Okay, right. Can I ask you a question? What business do you do?" And I told him, and he said, "Okay, do you want to stay making money?" I said, "Of course I do. What sort of a question is that?" He says, "Well, then, what you got to do is you got to cop yourself on. You got to do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't, you won't make money. Am I clear?" So nobody tells you that when you're talking about work-life balance.
Right,
And
right,
and the
right.
funny thing for me is if you explain to any business owner, if you do that, you will make more money, they would do that no matter what it takes. Would say our approach is wrong. We say, oh, you must, you must, you must. Forget about that. Why would you want to? Well, you don't change being a driven entrepreneur, driven business owner on any time. So you can't just switch and say, oh, you should take care. This is why. So everything has to have a why. Use
Yep,
Simon Sinek's thing. Well,
yep,
the why is if you are healthier, you will actually make more money.
yep.
Simple maths.
Absolutely, 100%. Couldn't agree more. I like Simon Sinek a lot. Yeah, he's
Mm,
great. He's brilliant on why.
mm.
Um, Again, I think we've probably hit it as well before, but what qualities do you look for in employees, and how do you foster a positive and productive work environment? I think you kind of cover the culture side, but even
I
develop
did.
further.
Yeah. So I guess the simple actions, right? I mean, our values are key to that, and they do foster a productive work environment. I have a couple of key things I will say to people. Look, telling me what the issue is once is quite enough.
Mhm.
Don't tell me 10 times. Come to me with an A, B, C if you got a problem. So A is I need assistance. Here are my options. B, I need backup. I may need your help or I may not, but I definitely feel I need your support. Or C, this is out of my control. I need you to take it over. So there's a very simple law. There's all these things like Murphy's Law and all these kind of things, but I read one called Kidlin's Law. And Kidlin's Law states that if you write down a problem, you're 50% of the way to solving the problem. So nobody now comes into this little glass box that I'm sitting in with half of the story, or they will be told to go politely back to where they started. Everybody has an issue. So how I foster it is there are always solutions and there are always problems. The one good currency we deal in is if you get rid of a problem, you can be sure there's another one going to come. So don't ever worry about running out of problems. And your job is to solve them. So how I foster that is very simple. Don't be afraid of it. Tell me what it is. Tell yourself what it is and write down what you think the solutions are because you can't kid yourself when you're writing down something.
Mhm.
And I have a disdain, a genuine disdain for negativity. So if I find somebody in a negative um, wantonly negative cycle, I count it as bad as blame. Um, and I can't have people in my team that don't want to solve problems. So I don't have them.
Yep.
And for somebody coming in young, I mean, I think one of the things as a, the older generation, let's say, we should be doing is teaching skills and understanding the skills as well. But yeah, we need to do that well.
Yep. Fantastic. No, I love that. Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose just to understand a little bit of the physiology, we're naturally wired to be negative, the
Hmm.
limbic
Hmm.
brain, reptilian brain, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
And it takes a lot of effort to be positive, but it makes, and again, I explain to people, I say that, because you're positive doesn't mean you won't have challenges. I don't
no,
like the word problem, I like challenges. Um, but you're in a much better position to solve them than if you're in this negative frame of mind, which is our natural state, the fight or flight. You really have to focus on being positive. And I think, but it's easy to do once you get it, once you buy into it.
sure.
Okay, so and maybe just to round up, what are some common misconceptions about running a business, and how do you address them?
First misconception is just what we talked about. Nothing ever goes to plan. How you address it is write that down, stick it in front of your computer. Your job is to solve problems. That's it. Don't complain about them. They're going to happen. As soon as you start opening your eyes, there's going to be a problem waiting for you. So the first misconception is you're going to have a business that runs so smooth and you're going to have that's nonsense. If you want that kind of a life, be a civil servant. That's where you get certainty, right? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a civil servant. I'm just saying you want that kind of certainty and order. That's where you go and get it. Don't do it in business. You're going to have chaos. You're going to have wins and losses, and they will teach you. So the misconception that you're going to have order is the thing.
Right. Okay. Okay. I absolutely love it. Listen, there's a whole bunch of gems in there for our viewers. Really appreciate you taking the time.
My
Uh,
pleasure.
Larry, lots of luck with all the adventures. Maybe wear a bit more padding or something. I'm not quite sure.
I have plenty of padding.
Okay, listen, that's great. Thanks very much, Gary.
Take care.